All right. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to our research and winemaking webinar series. I hope you can see the screen. You can see the screen, right? Thumbs up if you can see.
Hold on.
All right. Yeah,
Yes.
I don't.
You're
Okay,
good to
thank
go.
you.
Sorry.
All right. So thanks for being with us today. We hope you will enjoy this webinar, which is about cold stabilization, and that you will develop some knowledge and learn skills to be used in your vineyard and winery. Especially right now, that's probably the appropriate timing for cold stabilization. So if you don't know me, I'm Dr. Aude Watrelot. I'm an assistant professor and extension enology specialist in the Department of Food Science and Human Nutrition at Iowa State University. And I'm co-hosting this webinar with my friend and colleague, Drew Horton, a research specialist of enology at the University of Minnesota Grapes Breeding and Enology Project. So before we start the webinar, there are some instructions. So the webinar is being recorded, and it will be available on YouTube by the end of the year. So hopefully in 2 weeks, that will be available. You will have the link, so it's here, but I can share that on the chat box. Also, when you have a question, feel free to use the chat box. That's easier for us to manage. That you can find at the bottom of your screen, or try to unmute yourself if you have a question. And we will answer your questions at the end of the webinar, so after the presentation. Also, at the end of the webinar, please take 2 to 5 minutes to complete the survey that will be sent by email at the end. That's always helpful for us, just to know what we can change and make it easier for you to learn. So, Drew, do you want to explain what we're going to do?
Well, I will indeed. So today we're going to have a presentation, a practical presentation from 2 folks from Enartis. And that will be, after that presentation, we'll have a winemaker panel discussion about cold stabilization techniques, the pros, the cons, tips and tricks and techniques to manage potassium bitartrate. Or wine diamonds, as we sometimes call them, throughout the winemaking process. Presenting today will be Lorenza Allen and Davide Tescaro from Enartis. And then after that, we'll be joined by Chris Gerling from Cornell University, John Taylor from Chankaska Winery in Minnesota, hopefully Ryan Prellwitz from Vines and Rushes Winery in Wisconsin, and our old friend Zach Bott from Fireside and Ackerman wineries in Iowa. So let's start with our presenters today. Aude.
Yeah. So let me give the rights to Lorenza. All right. So Lorenza, you should be able to start sharing your screen. So Lorenza B. Allen is the technical marketing specialist at Enartis USA, providing technical expertise for marketing strategy and working alongside both Enartis local and international teams. She collaborates with the Enartis Research and Development Department, supports the sales team, and communicates Enartis products, services, and research to the public. Originally from Piedmont, Italy, Lorenza has worked in the wine industry since 2009. She developed a worldwide perspective of winemaking by working and studying in Italy, France, Portugal, Australia, and California, as well as obtaining a bachelor degree and master degree in viticulture and enology. Her goal is to dedicate her skills and expertise to finding efficient and sustainable solutions to the problems of the wine industry using science, innovation, and creativity. Drew, if you want to introduce David. Oh, you're muted.
I am sorry about that. David Tescaro is the global marketing specialist at Enartis, developing strategies and sales for the global Enartis team involved in many technical projects of work with wineries of different countries. He studied viticulture and enology at Milan, Italy, and obtained a master's degree in wine business and marketing at Verona University in 2015. After a couple of experiences as a winemaker in Italy and in Switzerland, he started working for in Enartis, following also in New Zealand, Australia, and finally Italy as the market developer of new technologies. His main experience was to study every stability process during the wine evolution, in particular during pre-bottling processing and operations. His goal is to provide wineries with competitive technological responses to ever-increasing market demands. Lorenza and Davide, we are ready for your presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Drew, for the introduction, and thank you all. Okay, so we're gonna talk about cold stability now. These are some of the topics that we're gonna cover today. We're gonna talk about what cold stability is, why it's so important. We're gonna touch on some of the analysis that we can do for cold stabilization, and then we're gonna dig deeper into the methods. So what is cold stability? Cold stability, also called potassium stability or tartrate stability, is the tendency of a wine to resist precipitation of potassium bitartrate crystals when exposed to low temperature. So it all starts with tartaric acid and potassium. Tartaric acid is the most abundant acid in wine, and potassium is a natural constituent of grapes, and it's also present in wine. At the wine pH and with the presence of potassium ions, tartaric acid is salified to form potassium bitartrate. The key point here is that the solubility of potassium bitartrate progressively decreases as the alcohol concentration increases. So as you can see in the equation below, potassium bitartrate is the solid form, is the salt, while the two other ions, the potassium and bitartrate ions, are the one dissolved in the solution. So let's talk about this process. Let's talk about crystallization. Crystallization is when ions come out of solution to form a crystal. And this happens when the solution is super saturated. So I'm going to quickly explain what concentration product and solubility products are. Concentration product is the concentration of those two ions that we saw before, the bitartrate and the potassium ions, that are currently available for crystallization in the solution. The solubility product is the maximum values of the concentration of these two ions that the solution can hold before then turning into the salt, the solid form, and falling out of solution. It's important to understand that the solubility product is function of alcohol and temperature. In fact, potassium bitartrate, the salt, it's not soluble in alcohol. So basically, we lower the solubility product during fermentation as the alcohol concentration improves. If we want to think of this process as a scale, our scale is unbalanced when the wine is unstable, and so the concentration product is greater than the solubility product. And our task is to balance this scale, or to find a way to balance these scales. And we have two different techniques, the subtractive technique and the additive techniques. We're gonna go into details later, but basically one lowers the weight of one dish if we want to think about the scale, and the other one increase the weight of the other. So some of the things that influence the stability. So there are some factors that promotes the stability and other that inhibits. So among the inhibitors, we have low pH, lower total acidity, lower potassium in grapes, so the elements that forms the tartrate, the salts. Protective colloids, meaning tannins, proteins, polysaccharides like mannoproteins that are already occurring naturally in wine, and finding agents. Promoters of instability are the concentration, obviously, of tartaric acid and potassium, higher alcohol, like we mentioned before, and lower temperature. Also filtration, because it eliminates the protective colloids, like we talked before, and the presence of crystallization nuclei, or crystallization points, that are the points where the crystal starts to grow. Talking about crystals, I wanted to show some pictures to describe common situation that we have in wine. So on the left, these are both potassium bitartrate crystals. On the left, we have what we usually find in literature. So the lucky crystal, something that we usually don't find in wine because the conditions are never perfect in wine. In fact, if we want to think about an example, we can think of a tree, and on the left we have a tree, meaning the crystal that grows in very good condition, great soil, great weather, the right amount of water. It's a simple environment. In wine, on the right, this is more or less what we will see. So we don't have the right, usually the perfect situation. There are a lot of limiting factors in wine, hence colloids. So if it was a tree, we would think about wind, lack of water, adverse conditions in general. These are pictures taken with a microscope of the same crystals, potassium bitatrate crystals. It's the same wine, but wine treated with different colloids. So we have Arabic gums, monoproteins, and CMC, and we're going to see more about these products later, but these are all used to improve cold stability, and they have an effect on the crystal, so they change the shape. They work in a different way to inhibit a healthy crystal formation. These are obviously dosages that were not enough to stabilize the wine, otherwise we will not even see the crystals. So why is cold stability so important? Cold stability, the main thing about the wine quality effect, or how cold stability affect wine quality, is a visual impact, if you want to think of sensory effect. It mostly leaves the nose and palate untouched, even though it modifies pH and total acidity over time. But what we really have to keep into consideration is the commercial quality of the wine. In fact, consumers may not tolerate the presence of blister. Sometimes it can cause alarm to the consumers, even though it does not significantly impact the quality of wine. I will quickly touch on the tests that we can do for cold stability. So the last three, conductivity, concentration product, and saturation points. I'm not going to expand on this, but these are to predict the instability of the wine and the precipitation of the salts. The first one, the refrigeration test, or cold hold. With this, it's a very simple test that's really easy to do. We basically hold a sample of filtered wine at -Celsius, which is 25 Fahrenheit, for a minimum of 3 days, and then we inspect for any sign of precipitation. And these tests mimic a real world condition. Okay, let's go deeper into the method now. I want to show you this timeline starting from winter. That was, the first thing that is always being used to stabilize, and some people still do. We're going to touch on all of this, but I wanted to just focus on the difference between subtractive techniques and additive techniques. So subtractive techniques are the first one to have been in use in the past, and they are non-specific, as in they take out compounds in general. They change the wine chemistry. In more recent years, we developed additive techniques, so colloids, and how they affect the way crystal forms. Think of the pictures that I showed you before. It's also important to notice that these colloids are usually already present in wine, or they are made from compounds that are already present in wine. So we're going to touch quickly on all of these methods, but then we're going to have a closer look at the Arabic gums and KPA. Okay, these three are the subtractive methods. So they remove one or both of the ions that we talked before, the potassium or bititrate ions. They are non-specific. In fact, with these techniques, usually there is a big change in how the wine tastes. We can taste the wine before and after this technique to see the difference. The cold method is the traditional one. It's probably the most famous one. Is when the wine is chilled either for several weeks or for a shorter amount of time if we use contact seeding, like cream of tartar. And this encourages potassium bititrate to drop out rapidly. It's non-selective, and it also takes out important colloids. It's also not time effective and not cost effective, and it has a huge impact on the environment. And as we mentioned before, has also an impact on the wine quality because it lowers the acidity. Resins and electrodialysis, they are selective for potassium ions. They are fast and easy in general, but they come with disadvantages. So a sensory profile impact first off, but also they're really not environmentally friendly. Moving to the additive methods, so the addition of crystallization inhibitors. These are colloidal stabilizer, and they work by inhibiting the nucleation and growth of the tartrate crystal, preventing their precipitation. So in this case, nothing is removed from the wine, and the crystallization process is simply disrupted. The first one, MTA, is metatartaric acid. It's a compound that is formed by the esterification of tartaric acid, which is obviously, as we already know, very much present in wine. It could be a pretty effective technique, but two main things. One, it's not legal in the States. Second, the efficacy is very limited due to a strong hydrolysis. So over time, metatartaric acid hydrolyzes back to tartaric acid, losing the efficacy. Monoproteins are derived from the yeast, and they have a positive impact on the sensory profile of wine. So it's something that winemakers might seek, but they are not suitable for very difficult wines, and they at high dosages they can clog the filters. CMC, carboxymethyl cellulose, it could be a very effective method, but it's not suitable for very difficult wines. But most importantly, it's not suitable for red wines. It can only be used for white wines. In fact, it reacts with colors and it makes the color precipitate. Last but not the least, Arabic gum and KPA. These two are both very easy, very sustainable, cost-effective, and fast. Arabic gum in the past was known for low filterability, and so was not very much used. But in the last couple of years, new Arabic gums have been developed, and they are very easy to filter and very effective. KPA, which is potassium polyaspartate, is an amino acid of aspartic acid, which is an amino acid that is already present in grapes, and is one of the most effective methods for cold stabilization. It's very effective, it lasts over time, and it respects the wine quality. It does not have any impact on the sensory profile of the wine. This is a table to summarize the additive methods, talking about the efficiency, how long they last, filterability, and effect of color. KPA is the winner, and I'm gonna pass the word to Davide.
Thank you, Lorenza. Thank you all for this opportunity. Just to conclude and to summarize what Lorenza said before, how you can see in this table, the problem about metatartaric acid is about the long effect of stability. The problem is the hydrolyzation of the product. About CMC, the problem is linked to the color, not about the efficiency of the stabilization. Problem about Arabic gum is about the efficiency, the strong efficiency in particular in wine with high unstable level. Problem about monoprotein is a little bit like Arabic gum, and sometimes is also about filtrability. So KPA is a long project that solve these problems, starting with metatartaric acid with the hydrolyzation and ending with CMC with the interaction of the color. Go over, please. And to introduce very quickly, because I believe that many persons of you know very well KPA. KPA is a very important project that was developed by an European and OIV investment, and the project was called Stabilization. And in the past, the project in Europe was involved 30 wineries checking the problem about gas emission, about water consumption, and about energy during the process. In particular, in this chart, you can see that cold treatment and every physical stability, in particular, cold treatment is a treatment that make a lot of energy and produce a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere. And in comparison with every additive process to stabilize tartaric instability, is less sustainable. And on the point of view of water, we tried to invest how is the consumption of water for every process. And how you can see in this chart, in these graphs, in particular electrodialysis, for every hectoliters of wine produced, invest more or less 22 liters of production. So it's very high the consumption of water in comparison with KPA of every additive stabilization process. On the point of view of cold stabilization, for every hectoliters generally are produced 5 to 7 liters of water. So very high level also for cold stability. This comparison made by Stabiliwine, like this international project, is made by the cost. The cost for per treatment, cost on the point of view of energy, on the point of view also of additive, and how you can see the cold treatment, the cost is very high. I come from in Italy, and I'm in Italy, and for example, in Italy nowadays the cost of energy is very high, and a lot of wineries are changing this approach from cold treatment to use KPA or CMC for these things. For the problem of cold treatment the cost of cold treatment is very high. So just to conclude about the use of KPA. KPA is a natural molecule because it's a molecule that the origin of this molecule is an amino acid very common in every vegetable product, and comes from L-aspartic acid. And Zenith is a range of products that where the most important ingredient is of course this KPA, this potassium polyaspartate. The focus of every Zenith product and the use of KPA is preserve the wine, the quality of the wine, because in comparison, in particular with every additive, every physical stabilization process, in particular in comparison with cold stability, where the precipitation of tartrate make also precipitation of quality of aromas. KPA is something that make better quality in your wine. Is also sustainable because reduce the 90% of CO2 emissions and the 80% of consumption of energy and water. As you can check before, is not not cost a lot, and for this reason is very competitive with other physical instability and with the other physical strategy to stabilize wine. And also the performance is very high in comparison, for example, with metatartaric acid, where the problem was the hydrolyzation of the molecule. Is also a range of product very easy to use after a cross filtration. So when your wines are ready, you can add every product of the range gamma, and you can stabilize very quickly the tartar instability. And after this, you can filtrate the product very quickly after a couple of hours after the use of the product. Just to make a conclusion about this speech, also important for the stabilization, in my opinion, on the point of view, not for tartaric instability, but more for colloidal instability or color instability. The Arabic gum Verec make a very good result. Also, in this way, we make during these last years a lot of research just to develop these two products that are product of the range of Maxigam. That the topic is a product that can stabilize very quickly the pigment of precipitation, and also are filterable. So these things is important to add with the Zenith Uno, the most important product of the Zenith range, but also you can use Zenith Color because Maxigam F is a very similar product to the Arabic gum present in Zenith Color. And also, how probably you already know, every Arabic gum Verec also improve mouthfeel and create more volume and balance, in particular in red wine. Thank you for your time and for this opportunity. I am here for any question.
Thank you very much, Lorenza and David, for your presentation. It was good to see the different tools that can be used for cold stabilization. If you have any question in the audience, please use the chat box or the Q&A box, or unmute yourself, but please type any question for Lorenza and David.
All right. That was an excellent presentation. There really are a lot of new ways, new products to achieve cold stabilization. I will mention the one thing, of course, the one advantage here in the Midwest or the upper Midwest for traditional cold contact stabilization is that it does reduce acidity. A lot of our grapes here have very high acidity and low pH. And of course, we get a very long, cold winters. So whether you use jacketed tanks or you just open the cellar door, certainly we can still use cold stabilization, but that's not always true. It's great to see these new additives, especially considering their sustainability and the lower use of energy and water and lower cost. Okay, I'll leave my comment there. Now we're ready to begin the panel discussion. As was mentioned earlier, we're going to be joined by Chris Gerling from Cornell University, John Taylor from Chankaska Winery in Minnesota, Ryan Prellwitz from Vines and Rushes Winery in Wisconsin, and Zach Bott from Fireside and Ackerman wineries in Iowa. And we really are fortunate today to have so many experienced extension, enology specialists and winemakers here to discuss the subject of cold stabilization. So I hope you're ready with a lot of questions because we've got some great scientists and some great practical winemaking knowledge here today.
Mm-hmm. And we do have one question, if we are ready. So Vanessa is saying, excellent presentation. Are there any links on how to do the KBA piece in a home winemaking situation?
Davide, do you want to answer this one?
Just to understand better, to KPA, sorry, what?
In a home winemaking situation. So at a small scale, I think
Yeah.
that's what is meant.
I can give to you my personal experience in Italy, because in Italy KPA is very well developed nowadays, and in particular with very not big winery but small winery is important to reduce every problem, because it's a product that very easy to use, and sometimes in particular with other stabilizing agent or other physical technique, you need to check something, you need control before bottling, and with KPA I can say that because it's very easy, we can say that 100% of sure of stabilizer the wines.
If I can add something to this, KPA is for a small production is probably even easier than the traditional cold methods, because you don't need big tanks with installation. It's just an additive that you can easily add and filtrate and bottle your wine afterwards. The one thing that it's important for before using KPA is to make sure that the wine is protein stable, which is something that is already very much required for commercial wines anyways. And yeah, and for whoever's interested, we have additional documentation to support the use of KPA and how to use it step by step.
Would red wines also need to be protein stable to use it?
In general, we don't check the protein instability for red wine, because the protein in red wine are linked with colloids or polyphenols. So the problem is generally is colloidal instability, not protein instability. And on the point of view, for example, of polyphenols for color for red wine, if your color is stable, you are sure that KPA doesn't react with the color, and for these things is a very well addition in comparison with CMC, for example, that react very well with color.
So I saw Chris saying yes to protein stabilization before using KPA. So did you use that product already? And all winemakers that are with us, did you also use that product? And what would you say compared to other techniques like cold treatment? Chris, you want to start?
Sure. We have done some trials with these products in partnership with Enartis, and we have been very happy with the results, and we've seen they've been very satisfactory in terms of the use of it, and in terms of quickly getting really good stability results by our methods of analysis. Everybody's method of analysis, as Lorenza mentioned, is a little bit different, but by our means, it's been great, and you do have to just make sure that you get the protein stability straightened out, and then we do have some grapes that can challenge these products a little bit more, because in New York make wine with like 100 different varieties of grape. And so things like Concord can be a different kind of an animal. So you might want to check with your sales rep when you talk about some of the varieties you're using, if they're a long ways away from vinifera, which they often are in the Midwest. So just check those varieties sometimes, or do some bench trials, I would say. But yeah.
Thank you. Zach, do you want to talk about?
So along those fronts, the only things I thought of, we've been using this KPA for about a year and a half with so far pretty amazing results. It's a pretty straightforward, talking about the home winemaker thing, it's really a straightforward product. It's really easy to use. You might have to buy a little more, depending on how much you're, if you only have 5 gallons of wine, I don't know what the smallest amount you guys sell is, but that's not a big issue for us. The one thing I'll add on, like Drew was talking about acid in wine, and we don't do all of our reds, and we've played around with citricum in our reds, but we do see an issue sometimes, especially with Marquette, where while we do have high acidity in our wines, we also seem to find a slightly higher pH, sometimes 3.5 or 3.6. And if we do want to cold stabilize it, sometimes we run into that problem where we're taking pHs from 3.5 to 3.8 or 9. This eliminates that problem. And we see that a lot after we're going through ML. We see our pH is changing a little bit, and we do sometimes, especially in Frontenac as well, but Marquette more especially, where we can avoid some of those 3.7, 3.8, 3.9 pHs that I don't particularly like in our red wine. So KPA for us has been, we haven't used it a ton in red wines, but for all of our whites, and we do some Catawba, and it's been successful for us in our Concord. We're just buying juice on Concord, but we haven't had any wine diamonds in about a year and a half, which is a pretty good run for us. So it's probably more successful than we were when we were freezing stuff in tanks. So we're pretty happy with it.
Good.
And I imagine you've saved a lot of energy in the last year and a half.
My boss is much happier with our electric bill.
Yeah, and saved a lot of time.
Yes, that's especially time. Yeah, because we can decide to bottle and we don't have to wait 2 weeks and with filtering, and yeah, it's been fantastic. So
can you literally add KPA 24 hours before bottling, or does it need to be a couple days?
Or 2 hours before bottling, or whenever. So we usually do it the day before, but we generally add it, we cross flow, and then we bottle. So we added our final mix right before we bottle, and we generally cross flow and then bottle the next day. I can't remember. Somebody was talking about they add it and cross flow right into their bottling line. So and it's showed nothing as far as filterability for us.
John Taylor, Ryan Prellwitz, have either of you done any work with KPA yet, or are you planning on it?
I can chip in. We've been working with KPA since it was before it was officially introduced to the U.S. It had preliminary approval or something. I don't know. Would that have been maybe 2017, 2018, something like that? I remember talking with Carlos or something from Enartis when he was initially involved with that. I think that's what it was. And so we've had great success with it. We have a VA filtration crossflow unit, and that has spiral wound membranes. So that's what we do for filtration post or pre-bottling from the bottler straight, or from the filtration straight into bottling. We do similar to Zach. Sometimes we're doing it the day of, sometimes we're doing it the day before. But it's can be a very tight window. There doesn't need to be any time in between. The only time we're cold stabilizing anything anymore is when we want to reduce acid. And like Zach and Chris both talked about, it's like there's the potential for pH is higher than you want to deal with. But that's something, it's an option for us now. We can cold stabilize, decrease TA, and not have to worry about, but only if we want to. And then we can also just treat for crystals if we really want to. So it gives us a lot more flexibility in our process, I guess, is the best way of looking at it. We have seen, I think there was maybe 2 wines. One wine we saw a little bit of crystals with, and one wine where I think I honestly just forgot to add them, that we saw some more in. And that's it over 4 or 5 years of time. So we've had great success with it, and very, very few issues.
Excellent.
Yeah, I actually haven't used it in the upper Midwest, but I had used it out in a trial out in California at a custom crush facility that I was working for. But we're typically driving our pHs up. Maybe it's the West Coast palate in me trying to drive for a little bit softer mouthfeel, but we're cold stabilizing via crashing pretty much everything that we do. Frontenac in particularly, anything that has Frontenac in it, we will end up with cold stabilizing at some point, simply so that we can mitigate any potential wine diamonds, because our biggest wine that we do, our biggest red wine is pretty dominant in Frontenac, and in the marketplace, wine diamonds were definitely something that we were getting feedback that the consumer did not particularly want to see in their bottle. So we've been crashing pretty much everything, particularly with Frontenac, but all of our whites and rosés.
And just so our audience knows, when John says crashing, he's referring to cold contact stabilization.
All right. We have a question from Mike. So what is the dosage? That's not directly related to KPA, but what's the dosage range for cream of tartar?
A speaker.
Sure.
Yeah, the dosage range for KPA is I
For
speak
cream
in
of tartar.
KHT.
Okay. But it depends. It depends on the stability. It depends. It's very difficult to say 100% sure, because it depends from instability.
Chris, you must have some sort of input on this question. I seem to remember between 1 and 4 grams per liter of KHT, and gee whiz, 4 grams per liter is in a 1,000-gallon tank. That's an awful lot of KHT. Do you have any input on that?
I have
Yes.
to remember what the range is. I don't know if John is using that when he's doing his cold stable. I have to look and see if I can remember what the rate is that people are using. But the one thing I wanted to point out is potassium bitartrate is amphoteric. So what does that mean? It means it could be an acid or a base, basically. So what it means is when you're removing it, when you're doing traditional cold stabilization, if your pH is low, you're going to make your pH lower. But as one of our panelists is pointing out, if your pH is high, it's going to make your pH higher. So because if you're the pKa of potassium bitartrate is what, in like the 3.4 range, I think. So if your pH is high, it's like removing an acid. Something's lower, so it's going to make your pH go higher. And if your pH is low, it's like removing a base. It's going to make your pH go lower. So that's something to think about with all of this. And we'll look up that.
I think that magic number is a pH of 365. Above 365, the pH will rise. Below 365, the pH
Yeah,
will
something
drop a
like
bit.
that. Yeah, that sounds right. Yes. And so I would see 50 to 100 milligrams per liter is what you were talking about as a dose. So that's a pretty low dose.
So a pretty standard potassium tartrate addition would be, on the West Coast, would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 pounds per 1,000 gallons, which is the equivalent of about 4 grams per liter. Would be a classic addition rate in order to seed a cold stabilization via using refrigeration. So I typically use about about 3/4 of that. I use about 3 grams per liter personally. One, it allows me a little cost savings, and it hasn't really affected the timing of the amount of resident time at temperature to achieve that cold stability.
Yeah, thank you. We have another question. Oh, go ahead.
I can chip in a little bit here as well. We were doing 4 grams per liter when we were doing cold stabilization. We were doing a 3-hour mix with that at temperature, and we were also monitoring the the conductivity. Yeah, we were monitoring the conductivity for the change, and I don't remember the range on that because I don't necessarily care anymore to ensure cold stability. But there was a change in conductivity that ensured or came close to ensuring that it was stable at that point. And somebody probably has the spreadsheet that that graphs it all out, but there's a certain drop in conductivity that made the it's like, all right, here's where we need to be at. And so we were successful with that as well. But yeah, there's cost savings, and what we were spending in by tartrate, we're probably just switching that over to Zenith as an expense. Maybe it's less, I'm not even sure, but it is easier, it is faster, and we don't have to use the electricity on it.
Yeah, conductivity, I believe, is 3 to 5% change.
Yeah, sounds right.
So related to that, one question is about fining. So since fining inhibits the effect of cold stabilization, it appears that fining with bentonite, albumin, or casein should be done at a separate state. Is this correct? So that should be, fining should be done before adding anything.
So our protocol is we're doing bentonite stability. Actually, prior to bentonite, we dose everything with Scottzyme KS, which is like essentially a kitchen sink. That helps to decrease our bentonite rates pretty significantly across the board. And that isn't something that I don't think Scott Labs knew that at the time, but we kind of told them, it's like, hey, we're using this and it's really effective. And so it's really, really rare where we're doing anything at 8 pounds per 1,000 with bentonite. We're more in the 1 to 2 range. And we're doing, what is it, the Enartis test for that starts with a P, I can't remember the name of it. But we're testing out bentonite with that.
We use, in Italy, we use the heat test with gallic tannin, with the use of gallic tannin to check the bentonite. And for example, for Zenith, for Zenith Uno that react not like CMC, you can have also a turbidity and NTU low than 20 NTU, and with the CMC you must be low than 10 NTU, so is more than double of less reactness with protein. So also for these things is a well strategy, a good strategy in comparison, for example, with CMC.
Because I noticed that this year some winemakers have issues to have protein stable white wines, especially for some of the varieties, and that's probably because those varieties are really rich in proteins, and even though they use bentonite, I don't know if that's because the amount of bentonite that they use is not high enough, but they still have some haze after bentonite.
We're using the Proteo test. I think Enartis carries that. It's made by Enologica Vaison. It's Proteo test, PROTEOTEST. So you monitor that with an NTU. Essentially, you're looking for an NTU rating for a turbidity, nephelometric turbidity units. And so that's showing us where we hit that stable point with different amounts. So that's been a really solid option for us. We've been using that for probably 4 or 5 years as well.
Okay, so you didn't observe any issues this year with some whites?
None.
For protein? No.
So in terms of doing cold stability while doing bentonite treatments, I'm similar to Ryan in that I also treat with enzyme my blends, particularly anything with Frontenac Blanc or Frontenac Gris in it, because they tend to be the worst culprits. So I'm sitting at an ambient temperature of somewhere between 55 and 65 on those for a week, and then I'm crashing out the temperature and adding my bentonite before I get to cold stabilization point, and then I add my cream of tartar. So it's a multi-step process for me, and the reason why I do it that way is, one, I don't want to be constantly washing tanks, and two, it's easier because I'll also add for color stability purposes, I'll add a little bit of polyvinyl polypyrrolidine to stabilize some color in the whites particularly. Not so much with the pink wines.
Yeah. Zach, did you observe any protein instability for whites, even though you did bentonite treatment?
Yeah, we haven't had any protein stability issues in a very, very long time. We kind of quit testing for it, frankly. We just used the standard bentonite addition. We are a gram a gallon kind of across the board on our whites, and that's been very successful for us. So knock on whatever it is you have to knock on, but so far so good. So, yep.
Yeah.
I do know that some of the Midwestern varieties have required epic amounts of bentonite, depending on the site and the year. And some of our, I've heard from people in Vermont who needed like 18 or 20 pounds per thousand or whatever, according to their, their testing or whatever. And people don't want to add that much. So sometimes they can't. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I'll echo Ryan's sentiments. Adding enzymes post fermentation before bottling prep, I should say, before stabilization, has really made a difference in protein stability for the cold climate varieties.
And this again is the Bazzano KS you guys are using?
Yeah, KS has, like Ryan was saying, they call it the quote-unquote kitchen sink. It's got cellulase, hemicellulase, beta-glucanase, pectinase. It's got a bunch of different stuff in it, and it's pretty darn effective. And I believe they've even come out with a step above KS,
Spectrum, yeah.
which is quite a bit more spendy, I've noticed, but I haven't had any reason to step up from the regular KS.
Yeah, that's Scott's Time Spectrum is what that's called, and yeah, it is pricier last I looked at least, but it's a good option when you need to go to something when you don't get the effectiveness you need. So maybe if you were hitting those bentonite trials at that 15 or 20 pounds per thousand, like ridiculously high, then step up the Spectrum or something like that as maybe a next step option in essence.
And I heard somewhere that those enzymes can also help increase filterability. Do you have any comments on that, anyone?
Absolutely.
One comment. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, Ryan and I found that out together at his place. So they absolutely do benefit filtration aid, both in really any filtration media. They will help aid filtration quite a bit, because at least I'm racking off because I've been bentonite treated, and so a lot of that supernatant is left behind, and your filter media doesn't have to contend with plugging too early.
The only thing I would throw in there is we've actually, on the flip side of that, we've had some issues with Zenith Color. I don't normally use it. I normally just use Zenith Uno on everything. But for some reason, we were trialing Zenith Color and had some issues with filterability on the crossflow with that. And so we haven't been using that. That I do believe has some gum arabic built into it, which is supposed to be filterable, but maybe with a crossflow or with a spiral wound membrane crossflow, it has issues. So we just use Zenith Uno as a solution for that.
Yeah, crossflow is definitely a different animal than a sheet filter or a cartridge filter. That's for sure.
So Lorenza and David, do you have a comment about that? Zenith Color?
Yes, yes. Generally, Zenith Color, because there is this Arabic gum Verec inside that is a part of this product, is a little bit less filterable than Zenith Uno, and you be sure that you add Zenith Color after cross filtration, and if your wine is filterable with an index of filtration low than 10 more or less, so is very low the level of the filtrability. Your wines will be filterable after the use of Zenith Color. If is a little bit higher, the filtration, the filtering index could be a problem.
Yeah. And we have a question related to that from Ted, who is asking, do you use Acacia Verec for color and stable wines?
Generally, we use Verec for color and colloid instability, because Verec is very different Arabic gum on the point of view to the Sayal Arabic gum, on the point of view of for the stabilizer of the colloidal instability, and also for color instability. But the problem linking to the question that they make is generally is less filterable than the Arabic gum Sayal, and it's for this reason that we are investing a lot in research to try Verec Arabic gum, but better filterable.
Okay. Does any of you used San Pepin or Lacrosse whites with that product?
Yeah, I do. Pretty
Okay.
extensively and no issues.
Okay. Thank you. We don't have more question, I think, for the moment.
Your last question, that was Saint Pepin, and what was the other variety?
Lacrosse.
Oh, Lacrosse. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think I do have a question about CMC. So you were saying CMC is pretty negative for color. Do you talk about more just Vitis vinifera? Or do you also include hybrids in that comment? Because they don't have the same pigments. So I'm wondering if the reaction between CMC and anthocyanin would be the same for all those type of varieties.
Yeah, the problem of CMC is the link with the anthocyans. So for every cultivar, for every varieties, and react very well. If the color is more unstable, so if your wine is very rich of color of anthocyans, react very quickly with this color.
Okay, I'm checking for other questions, but I don't have.
And I've almost run out of questions, which is unusual for me.
I have a question. For a lot of winemakers, they still use cold treatment where they put their tank outside because it's snowing. We have very cold temperature. So what would you think about having your wine outside for, I don't know, some weeks? Is it a good technique? What would be the pro and the cons?
Well,
Because you don't use any energy if you just put outside, right?
that's true. One thing that comes to mind is that a mistake that is easy to make with such a method or cold treatment in general, even if we use an insulated tank. For example, sometimes we wait or winemakers wait to do the racking. And so when there is a change in temperature, the salts become soluble again. And you don't eliminate all of the salts by doing so. You bottle and then you can have precipitation in bottles after that. That's one.
As someone who has done this, I'm gonna chime in here.
Good.
So
I was going to ask you, Zach.
it
I know you.
seems like a really good idea, but there's a couple of things. One, you have to have a decent place to store it. You're putting your wine outside, and it's available to anyone in the free world to approach. If you live out in the boonies like I do, it's probably not a problem. But if you're in some sort of urban area, you're basically putting a few hundred gallons of wine outside. Two, you don't have stable temperatures unless you live somewhere. And I know, realize sometimes Minnesota, you get to maybe 20 or below and hold, but here it's pretty rare. We go from 20 to 35 to 15 to 50. So we do have a bunch of variations that way. And then the other thing, and my assistant's in here and he was chiming in and he's very right on this. One other big advantage to KPA is you don't have to clean your tanks with tartaric acid stuck on the inside and climb into tanks and scrub them. It's just very much more consistent and steady. And one other thing we haven't talked about that's an advantage of KPA, but is very important, especially I think in the upper Midwest winemaking, is it removes one of the big areas of oxidation problems that we see. Taking your wine down to 32 degrees and mixing it really hard is a great way to oxidize a wine really fast if you're not doing a great job with it. So yeah, if it's your only option, putting wine outside is a great way. And we did a lot of wine that way when we first started. I'm glad we don't have to do it anymore. So
I would say batch size is also super important if you're going to use that method, because the larger the volume that you have to contain, the more difficult it will be to maintain that temperature, and get it down to temperature that you want to have it down to. So batch size is super important as well.
Yeah, and so we have a comment related to that and a question. So we are a small winery that uses Mother Nature for cold stabilization. We were going to start last weekend, but saw the overnight temperature. We're going to be in the single digits for 3 nights this week, so we delayed. How cold can it get to safely do this? Because they have an unheated shed for this, so the tanks are safe. So how cold can it get?
Every wine is different and can freeze, as in freeze solid, in a range of temperatures. And again, it also, as John just mentioned, it has to do with batch size. The amount of time it would take to lower the temperature in 100 gallons is way different than, say, 500 gallons or 1,000 gallons in one tank, in one volume. If it's in a shed and the outside temperature is single digits, let's say 9 Fahrenheit, I'd want to be checking on it. And again, Zach Bott made an excellent point. For newer winemakers, they may not be aware, or they may have forgotten that the colder a solution, the faster oxygen can saturate, can cause oxidation. So I'd want to pay attention, and I'd want to make sure that the tanks that I was doing this with were very, very full, with a minimum of headspace, i.e., with a minimum of a potential source of oxygen or source of oxidation. So there's a lot of variables involved. Zach, do you want to add anything to that?
I mean, we never, and we usually use 300-gallon tanks when we did it. We could never get one to freeze solid, so I can't imagine that 3 nights at 6 degrees would. I mean, unless it's like a 5-gallon bucket. I mean, I don't know how big a batch she's talking about or he's talking about, but the colder is actually better, because what would happen to us is you would, that 6 degrees is awesome. It's the 35 to 40 during the day. It's like we couldn't get things cold consistently. So unless you're getting way below zero for an extended period and it's at least 100 gallons, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Just watch it.
I.e., watch the temperature.
Yeah.
Maybe take the temperature off, and if you see it getting, let's say, below 25 or below 20,
Inside.
Yep, good enough.
We do have outside tanks. In our part of the world, lots of people have permanent outside tanks, like 1,000-gallon tanks, 1,500-gallon tanks, and but how, and people keep wine outside, and some tanks do freeze, and then they have to thaw after that. It's not the end of the world, but as Zach was saying, how effective people are at cold stabilizing completely is less clear, because the temperature is so variable out there. And so what you're doing, I think they're getting them pretty stable, but as Lorenza was saying, that when they get warm again, some of that stuff goes back into solution, so they get them maybe mostly stable, but it's a really hard way to do completely stable wine if you're thinking about this from a commercially perfect standpoint.
If they don't have a measurement method and a spec, it's really difficult to say how stable are you.
Yeah. We have a question from Pat. Has anyone who does not do the traditional cold stabilization but are using the KPA, do they have customers that buy a bottle of wine and leave it in their fridge for a week or better or longer? Are they seeing any crystals at the end? Do you have any?
Beat that one. I don't have customers. I have employees that do that consistently, and we have not had any problems. Customers would be great. We haven't, but in all seriousness, we've not. We started a year and a half ago, and we haven't had we have not had one single bottle returned because of crystals. And before that, we would have batches, especially Catawba, stuff like that, that's really high acid. No matter how good a job I did cold stabilizing it, because I don't own a spec, and I wouldn't send it to you because I'm hard-headed, that we would have batches occasionally that would show crystals, and we just have to deal with it. But and I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's a fair amount of wine that we've shipped out the door that hasn't done it yet. So, yep.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just the time saving and the energy saving, the water saving, the lower CO2 emissions, all of this points towards a bright future, to say the least, for KPA. Especially if you're lucky enough to work with vinifera. Again, Chris, when you mentioned in your trials, were any of your trials on the either Swenson's or the U of M varieties?
No.
No.
They were not. That could be our next step. Yeah, this was actually Chardonnay and Riesling. But we did after we tested them. We added the product. We did we have a check stab, to test things. So it's and then we put everything in the refrigerator for a month, and everything was fine. So yeah, except for the products that didn't work in the first place, but these did. So yes, yeah.
Sure. Excellent. Well, that's just great news. Any other questions, Dr. Watson?
No, we don't.
All righty.
If you have any question, please type it. But we don't.
Okay.
Any additional comments that anybody wants to make?
There may be some participants here, some winemakers here that don't know how to get a hold of Enartis. Can Davide or Lorenza quickly mention their website?
Yes, you can just type Enartis and it should come up Enartis USA, and that's the website, and you can find contact information there. There are emails and the phone numbers, so if you call, you're going to reach out to our customer support and they're going to answer to any questions. You can also get directly in touch with me, lorenza.allen@enartis.com. And depending on where you are, I can obviously answer all of your questions, and I can put you in touch with your closest sales reps. We have a lot of technical sales reps around the country. They can answer all your questions and help you with the products.
Is Enartis, are you able or willing to provide small samples, trial size samples, free of charge to people who want to trial these products?
Yeah, we can do that.
And where is the main office of Enartis located? Is that in California?
So, well, yes, we have a lot of our offices around the world, but in the States, the main one is in Northern California, in Windsor, so 1 hour north of San Francisco.
Excellent.
Good. I just shared your email address, Lorenza, in the chat box. So everybody, if you have any question, feel free to send an email to her.
Please.
Yeah. All right. I think we can conclude a little bit in advance if we want.
All right. I think that's a good idea. Again, we've got some actual winemakers here who probably need to finish off their afternoon. I'd like to thank our winemakers panel, Chris Gerling from Cornell, John Taylor from Chankaska in Minnesota, Zach Bott from Ackerman and Fireside wineries in Iowa, and Ryan Prellwitz from Vines and Rushes in Wisconsin. We really appreciate it, guys. It's nice to have the science and the research, but always very useful to have the folks who use the science on a day-to-day basis and who are full of excellent practical information. So thank you to all of you.
Yeah, thank you very much to all the presenters and panelists, and all of you who listened. Hopefully you learned something. It was helpful for you today. And so please send us an email or directly to Lorenza for any question you may have after that webinar. And then, so before closing, so the next and the last webinar is going to be next month, December 13, about wine packaging. So if you want to learn about wine in a can, wine in a pouch, wine in a keg, wine in a bottle, feel free to join us. Same place, same time, December 13. And then if you can take just 2 to 5 minutes to complete the survey, you're going to receive in about 15 minutes, because that will be sent right at the end of the real webinar. Please take a few minutes to complete that. That's really helpful for us.
I have one quick question for our winemakers, for anybody who hasn't left, John or Zach or Ryan. Are any of you looking into, or have you used any alternative wine packaging, cans, pouches, bag in a box, Tetra Paks, any of those things?
Yes.
And are you going to continue looking into those alternatives?
No.
Okay.
So what alternative
that's
was
not
it?
entirely fair. Wine in a keg is probably something that we'll keep, at least locally, for our distribution partners, our retail by the glass programs. But cans, no. Pouches, no. And those. So yeah, we've done 3 of the alternatives to glass.
Zach, are you using any?
We've looked into glass, or looked into cans, but we haven't. We have a really nice bottling line, so we didn't want to Like, we spent all this money on a glass bottling line. Why are we going to do that? And it's sort of like what John, I haven't talked to anybody that's done cans and was like, it was overwhelmingly positive. We've had a few people tell us it was okay, but I haven't had anybody go, oh yes, you need to do it. So until I hear at least one other person say that, I'm probably gonna.
The big issue with cans, well, I mean, maybe that's maybe better for next month there, Ode, but I was going to say the problem with cans is that they do have a shelf life. And the consumer has a hard time getting their mind wrapped around the economics of a can of wine in a can. It's definitely a concern for most consumers.
And Chris, you guys have done some pretty deep research on canning. What's your feeling these days? Is it worth considering, or are there just too many challenges?
Winemakers hate them, and they should, and customers love them, and they should. And so that is the tension, the central tension we have right now. And so people who have done it can't stop because of their sales figures, but they're not going to recommend to you that you do it because they're not having fun, and it's not easy, and there's a lot of challenges and problems, but they sell really, really well. And so when you talk to people like in the cider industry, nobody's making fewer cans than they used to. They're making more, even though they definitely have a shelf life. You have to be very low SO2 to do this correctly. And so with all the challenges that entails, but it's this, the people are starting to figure things out with the liners, so it's getting better, but it's a big challenge. And as a producer, you also have to do really good math on if the cost is making sense to you, because what people think they should pay for a can is less than they think they should pay for a bottle. And so, how right do you want the customer to be is the question, I guess. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I hope we've got our audience excited about December 13th.
That's a good teaser. That's good.
You got lots of things to talk about already.
Yeah, we won't say anything more, but we hope we've whetted your appetite for the upcoming December 13th discussion. Was there one other comment?
Ryan, did you say anything about alternative to packaging?
No, I'm not that stupid. I've heard enough people tell me that, like, oh, it's just not fun, not a good idea. We've switched mostly to screw cap, and I've been happy with that change. But I don't want to deal with, everything else. Just seems like a hassle. And even like, what quantities do you put in those packages? And so I don't need that in my life. Like, I've got enough stressors.
And what about kegs, Ryan? No work with kegs?
Not yet. Maybe at some point we will. But again, like, when we bottle something, we bottle 100% of that batch. And so what quantity do you put in keg and what quantity do you put in bottle? So I don't know. I haven't gone that route. Maybe at some point we will trial something. But none of the options have seemed like a real good idea yet. But eventually something will come around the corner.
All right. Well, thank you again for that last answer. Ode, I think I've run out of questions. Thank you again to all the panel.
Thank you very much. Have a good day, and we will see you soon.
Thanks.
See you next month, everybody.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.